And I better press. All right. Welcome everyone to the Horizons Region Farm Environment Planning webinar. You'll see that there's a few different faces on your screen here. So I'd like to introduce Wendy Kilsby and Richard McIntyre from down in Porua Tawhao, who are joining us today to provide a bit of a farmer's perspective later on. But I guess as a start, having a little bit of a tune through farm environment plans. Now I have a starting slide for you, which is, oh geez. And now it's not letting me scroll through. Man, I love Zoom meetings sometimes. They're just so flash. Here we go. Right. Welcome to our Farm Environment Plan webinar. Hopefully you can see the screen the same as I can. So as a start, can you guys all please put into your chat box? So you should see a chat box as part of you being able to see this webinar, and let us know where you're from, what your interests in farm environment planning are, and we'll kind of give you a minute to do that. So it would be great. I'm going to turn on my little chat box here so that I can see hopefully some of that content coming in. And it's not letting me see it. Oh, now it is. Here we go. So hopefully I should be able to see some of that coming in from all of you. Oh, excellent. Great start. Thank you, Nadine. So would be really nice to capture some of that information from you all. Right, we're going to keep going. Now it's telling me I can't, but it's going to let me now. Here we go. So farm environment planning web outline. So we're going to talk a little bit about New Zealand Landcare Trust, a little bit of a timeline about farm environment planning and why we have an FEP, a little bit about Horizons Region and the requirements as they sit now and the benefits. And then we have Wendy and Richard having a chat, and then we're going to talk questions with you all. So that's kind of the outline for today. So New Zealand Landcare Trust, we are a small not-for-profit charitable trust with a bunch of regional coordinators around New Zealand, and we work with communities to do good environmental projects in a nutshell. We are not, I definitely say we're not experts in farm environment planning, but we've had enough experience to see the good, bad and the ugly of this, and certainly are really keen to answer any questions that you have today. Our trustees are a bit mixed and varied. You can see that there's some pro-farming ones there, some pro-environmental ones there, and some pro-social ones there. So the intent is really for us to be an independent organisation that provides independent advice, the best that we can at any given time, and to provide that national context around the work that we do. You can imagine our trustee meetings can be pretty fun at times with the characters that we have around the room, and actually they all do really come together very well around the concept of land care and working with communities. So it's really great space. Oh, I went the wrong way. Right, so we have Wendy Kilsby here from Porua Tawhao to talk today, and it's really great that Wendy can be here and to pass on the experience, and same with Richard, who's Wendy's sharemilker, and to pass on some of that knowledge. But before we get on to them, a little bit of a history, which most of you, I would imagine, will know. This is kind of the trajectory that we've all started moving towards. So once upon a time, we had sort of soil conservation plans that were done back in the day. We've got nutrient budgets, you know, with overseer that have been touted about for quite a long time now, particularly originally to deal with fertiliser inputs. And then from there, we ended up with nutrient management plans and farm environment plans. And then people have banded around this word whole farm plan too as well. And certainly in our region, that word is used quite a lot in a regulatory context. However, nationally, we are now talking about farm environment plans, and that is the language that is starting to become quite consistent. And farm environment plans and whole farm plans kind of combine into that farm environment plan space, the FEP, that everyone is talking about at the moment. Interesting nationally that it looks like with the new policy stuff that's starting to come out that we are going to be having to do farm environment plans in the majority of catchments over time to anything beyond 5 hectares, which is it's a pretty small number. So that means a lot of people out there who currently don't have farm environment plans will need to get one. And what does that actually look like? And what bits do they actually need to have in that to make it fit for purpose and to make it so that they can meet what the government is after is a great question. We don't quite know as yet. Is it going to be useful? I will underline yes there. Having a farm environment plan is going to be useful for you, and making a start is a really, really important thing that I would certainly suggest to everyone. And that could be something really simple. It might not be significant, you know, bring a consultant in to do it. There's ways and means that you could make a start without spending a lot of money. Certainly one size does not fit all for each different farm. There are massive regional differences, and they can offer different things to different people. And depending on the profile of your farm is going to depend on what you choose. In this region, we have one plan, which all of you guys hopefully will know about. In one plan, we had identified sensitive catchments within the region that were required to have farm environment plans, and they were targeted to particular industries. So dairy, cropping, market garden, and intensive dry stock where it's irrigated. And that was basically the threshold for intensive dry stock. So anyone else outside of that, so if you're not part of those, you know, intensive industries and you're outside of a sensitive catchment, you don't need to have one at the moment. But we now have got this looming cloud of regulation, which is potentially anything over 5 hectares might need one. So everyone should be thinking about how you step forward to have a farm environment plan. A SLUI plan is a farm environment plan. It might need bolting in some additional bits. A Tiaki plan, the dairy plan that the Fonterra do, that is also a farm environment plan. There's a whole bunch of them that are out there already that categorise as a farm environment plan and might need additions, but they are the start that you need to get you on that journey. And that's where I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to pass the baton over to Wendy and Richard.
Okay, I'm Wendy Kilsby and I'm a rural woman, and we farm just north of Puratapa, live at Puratapa, and it's a 3rd generation dairy farm. Brian's great-grandparents came out from the UK in 1855 and settled at Koptarai at 1896. Brian's grandfather took over 1/3 of the property from his other 2 brothers. He milked 40 cows, had 1,200 sheep and arable cropping, and 60 beef cattle. Brian's father took over the property and farmed it in a similar way. Then in 1990, when the wool prices slumped again and dairy looked promising, Brian, myself and his father made the decision to convert the entire property to dairy. We engaged a share milker, Mike and Tracy Collis. As the farm was split by State Highway 1, it created some challenges. So a relatively new idea was to put a 25-metre underpass under State Highway 1. This allowed 460 cows free access from either side to a new 40-side cow shed, which was the 3rd cow shed on the farm. It was decided that I would continue to work off farm to enhance the budget, and we basically lived off my off-farm night shift income for many years, raising 2 children. We've had 3 share milkers since converting fully to dairy. The first 2 stayed for 9 years, reaching their goal of farm ownership, and Richard and Emma have been with us for 6 years and counting. Brian's grandparents were keen farm forestry and thankfully fenced off 2 lovely original native bush areas, as well as 4 smaller pine plantations, which had been harvested some of and replanted 15 years ago. Our farm environment plan with Fonterra has been an asset and has helped with planning. The farm is relatively low to medium risk and is comprised of 3 main blocks: the main milking pasture block, the hill block, and the effluent block. It has flat to easy hills. At Farm Peak we milk 460 Friesian cross, Jersey cross cows, 200 to 250 winter milk. Cows are milked twice a day year round. Split calving is in order to manage the seasonal variations in pasture growth and in particular to protect against the dry summer that occasionally occurs. Our stocking rate is 2.4 cows per hectare, and we buy in a range of supplementary feed including pasture and maize silage, hay, PKE and DDG mix, which is fed in the milking shed. We also grow a mixture of summer, turnips and chicory plantain mix and autumn winter crops, fodder beet, to provide feed during pasture deficits. We decided not to irrigate, which we personally feel there is not enough science understanding water flows. We believe if you need to irrigate, perhaps it is not dairy farming land. We work with the weather, the sand ridges that run east to west, which are used for grazing during the winter and when the flats are wet. The farm has approximately 4.5 kilometres of waterways, the majority of which are classified as minor or non-constant waterways that do not hold water year round. Approximately 1.5 k's are fenced off to exclude stock. We are presently just completing extensive earthworks on our seasonal wetland, along with guidance from Horizons. We look forward to seeing it fully planted and being its own microclimate. We have also just completed refencing the main drain to allow Horizons to assist with planting. As far as the cowshed effluent disposal goes, it is all done with Horizons compliance, and we can disperse it through mobile irrigator, or when there is a risk of ponding in the pasture, we can divert the effluent to a holding pond. Nutrient management on farm is done through annual nutrient budgets and soil testing. The farm has participated in the Fonterra nitrogen program for the last 5 years, providing the information to ensure and oversee a budget can be developed. Set blocks are soil tested every year, so management decisions can be made to ensure Olsen P levels are kept within optimum range. Sand country P levels do not need to be high as leaching can occur, and fertiliser applications are tailored for different blocks. Nitrogen is applied little and often, and pasture and crop growth is assessed before applying nitrogen. For the last 20 years, we have been hosts to 60 or so second-year Lincoln University Ag students visiting our sand country property. We enjoy the diversity and learn and share more about our property each year with the tutors as they explain the history of sand country and how the dunes were formed and how we maximise the production from our puki black sand, along with minimising nutrient runoff, and how we maximise the use of our farm topography. We find it frustrating that the government targets farmers. The latest is the new freshwater policy. We understand the idea is great, but horticulture and urban should all have the same restrictions Also, Fonterra and Horizons give us similar checks which overlap, charging compliance fees. There seems to be very little advice regarding weed control in the farm environment plan. We keep on top of gorse, ragwort and thistles and with regular grubbing, my job, and spot spraying. Over the last 5 years, we have new weeds to us: Canadian fleabane, Bathurst burr, thornapple and stalkspill. Our goal is to improve our resources and environment as finances allow, keeping in mind our contract with Richard and Emma, and to build resilient businesses while improving our farm for future generations. Thank you.
Well done, Wendy. Well done.
So thank you so much for that, Wendy. I think that what we're going to do now is we're actually going to open it up to people for questions. Questions for me, question for you, Wendy and Richard. And so feel free either to put those into the chat, but what I'll actually do is I'm quite keen to enable everyone to talk. So I'm going to switch you all on right now. And if you guys have any questions, and I would be, so you feel free to unmute your mics, ask any questions of me, ask any questions of Wendy, and we'll go from there. So I've got all of you set up now to be able to do that. So if you unmute, you can talk to us. Any takers? I can see Mani on the line. I'm sure Mani has a question for you. I know Mani quite well.
Hi there, Alistair. Yeah, I am here. Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of questions. I was hoping to hear from a few other people. Maybe my first question would be, how do you, in your farm environment plan, Wendy, you mentioned that you were classified as medium to low risk, and I was just wondering how that classification is like determined. Like, how do you come up with that?
The lady that did the farm environment campaign came up with it, I suppose, is the answer.
So I think it's down to the soil type and the rainfall, etc. And so we're considered to be medium to low risk of nutrient runoff.
And we're quite away from the Manawatu River. Well, a few yeah, not that close, so we.
No,
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a climate and soil type and type thing. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's on it. So Wendy and Richard's place is in the coastal Manawatu subzone, and it actually has there are a lot of little seasonally flowing sand country streams that actually flow from their place down for quite a long duration before it actually hits a drainage network and ends up in the Manawatu River. But yeah, sand country and peat soils you would have too there as well, would you, Richard?
There's
a bit of peat?
Peat in one paddock.
Oh, right, okay.
Only
one.
But aside from that, we're pretty good.
Nice. Any other questions, anyone? Sure, there's more than one. I just picked on Mani to start. Anyone else? Linda, do you have any questions, Linda? I know that you're a little bit of a different operation up in the top end of the Pohangana.
Sorry, I was just on mute. Here we are, and just interesting to see what everybody else is, or what the down country are doing with their farm environment plan. We've had one in place for 15 years now, and I'm just not sure whether it needs to be updated. And if so, is that a process we should look at doing through with Horizons?
So sorry, the question was for us?
Oh, no, it's for Alistair.
Right, okay, cool.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? I actually got a little bit distracted here looking at the chat too as well. Can you fire that one at me again, Linda?
So we've had our farm environment plan now for 15 years, and I'm not sure whether we need to look at getting that updated, and if so, whether we do that through Horizons.
Look, I think that's a really good question. I would certainly, if it were me, I would be asking Horizons if they could go through the process of updating with you. I think that would be really, really good, given they have all of that SLUI base file information and everything like that for you. If they, I know that they're really busy and they're overrun with SLUI plans at the moment. There is the potential that you might actually need to just, look at what you had and then look at some new actions that you actually might want to put together based on the information that you have, because a lot of the soils and the topographical information and the other things might still be quite relevant that they've got in the original plan, but just maybe some of the actions might be different that you might want to work through. And so, yeah, certainly if Horizons are prepared to give you some time, that would be the preference. But otherwise, actually starting to formulate some of that stuff yourself, I think you'd be quite capable of doing that.
Do we know
that would be my suggestion.
Okay. Do we know how much longer we're likely to get subsidies from Horizons for doing works that are listed in our plans?
That is a really good question. I think that they had signalled that it was going to at least be for another couple of years while they still have the funding from central government. But I think that there are also some signals out there that that once the money disappears this time, that they might struggle to actually get further funding. But having said that, they've done very, very well at getting central government funding to help support their program. And look, I really hope that they do get more funding to help with delivering SLUI works with farmers, certainly in that highly erodible country. So, yeah, I hope that it continues on in my mind.
Okay, thank
you. Now, there was a question from Annabelle too as well that I would be quite keen to do. So that was a question for Wendy, was how did Wendy start? Is this so how did you kind of get into the game? Is this generational? How did you start getting involved? And I'm assuming that's around a farm environment plan. How did you start with your farm environment plan? You might need to correct me there if I'm wrong here, Annabelle.
Fonterra, through Fonterra, all Fonterra farmers have to do one, don't they?
Yeah, so I guess, for us, it all started years ago with, like you're saying, nutrient budgets and then nutrient management plans and understanding, I guess, our environmental impact beyond our farm gates. I think that's one of those things that, farmers have gained an increasing understanding over the years about. And then from there, it was sort of trying to work through what we could do about that and find some targeted issues and solutions. And so when we found out Fonterra would do one of these for us, we thought that that would be a great starting point, to get I guess a free one via Fonterra. So we did that, a couple of years ago, we started that process.
A lot of things.
Sorry, I was just going to say, does that answer Annabelle's question? But yeah, keep going, Wendy.
So a lot of the recommendations, a lot of them don't have to be acted on. So the riparian planting, because we're on State Highway 1, we decided last year that it would be a good idea to show that we were actively doing something for our farm, because we're very visible to passing, and also the wetland. But for Brian and I, we have to think seriously, because we've got a contract with Richard for a certain amount of productive land that he can, and so we've got to really think seriously about what we do, because we've got to not annoy him.
It's a high priority. But in all seriousness, when we took the farm or started doing our due diligence before signing the share milking contract, one of the things we looked for or looked at with this farm was, what it was doing environmentally already. And Brian and Wendy have been very good at not trying to push this farm too hard or anything like that, or turn it into something that it wasn't naturally. I guess, they've left all the sand hills in place, that they've got these pockets of native bush. Everything was fenced. We've been beyond compliant for quite some time, which has been great. But probably the other big thing's been the stocking rate. The average stocking rate in our area is 2.8 cows per hectare. We're 2.4, so we have less cows there, essentially causing less environmental impact. I suppose, Marnie, you'd like that, no doubt. And it's just meant that the system's not very pressured at all in that respect. We work on feeding the cows well and looking after them well without having to import obscene amounts of supplement or anything like that. So, even before this farm environment plan, etc., Brian and Wendy were already sort of down that track anyway in terms of...
without knowing it.
Without knowing it. And so the farm environment plan sort of highlighted some of the things that Brian and Wendy were already doing that were very good, and then just suggested a few things that we could do to improve things further, which was awesome.
Nice. So I'm just looking at the chat, and I note Marnie's comment. There's quite a lot of money coming through the pipeline from central government, 700 million, and you're absolutely right. What's really interesting, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it actually lands in terms of the of where that funding is actually allocated, whether it's resourcing, whether it's people, exactly how that they're planning on doing that. And I actually met with or had a meeting with MFE online very recently, and they said they're still really trying to chew out exactly how this is going to work and the mechanisms that they're actually going to use to actually spend that funding. And so this is going to be a time will tell space. But look, I would really seriously hope that there is funding in there, particularly for erosion work, kind of like what Linda is going to be tackling a little bit, and a little bit of that kind of space. I mean, there's actually so many pools of money around at the moment in this space too, as well. It's been talked, not only the 700 million, but the Billion Trees Fund, some of the MPI, Ministry for Primary Industry funds that are being talked about for farmers to help them with their program of work. So there's certainly a bit of money being touted around here. And it's just making sure that it's ending up in the right places. So certainly, I'm hoping that our trust will be involved a little bit in guiding some of that conversation too, as well. But yeah, it's a fascinating time that we're walking into post-COVID. So yes, we very much look forward to seeing where that's all going to land. And as Craig has said too here, as well as a comment for Linda around a freshwater module that might be required to meet NES. I would suggest Craig's absolutely right. So your SLUI plan that was done 15 years ago will probably need to have a module bolted into it specifically focused on freshwater. And whether that's the regional council that bolts that bit in, or whether external contractors have to do it, or whether you can actually write it yourself, given a template or some guidelines around that kind of stuff. We don't know how that's going to land yet. So that is going to be fascinating to see exactly how government is proposing to do that. I would imagine that it's probably leaning more towards regional council, but then there's that whole question of, well, how's that going to be funded, and is regional council going to get a decent dollop of money to land that? So, Marnie, your hand's raised.
My hand's up. Yeah. I knew I had lots of questions, and thank you, Richard. Yes, I do like the lower stocking rate. That's good. And I've got a couple of questions. One for Wendy and Richard, and one for Alistair. And so for Wendy and Richard, I'm wondering, in that farm environment plan, what was the most useful information that you got out of it? Maybe something that you hadn't known before and that was really useful and really helpful to you? And then on the other side of that, what was the kind of either most confusing or least useful part of it?
Oh, jeepers. Let me think how to answer that. There was a lot of stuff that we sort of knew a bit about already, and some that and others that I guess the Farm Environment Plan highlighted their importance. So probably for me, one of the biggies was exactly what we do around winter cropping, how we move essentially our feed supply around the winter, etc., to produce the least environmental impact possible. We had for a period of time been grazing fodder beet or having fodder beet as our wintering policy, whereas we shifted the fodder beet to the autumn to feed that in the autumn and then build up some more feed for your grass, etc., for the winter, so that we have the cows more extensively grazed over the winter. So stuff like that, understand the environmental impact around it, and using cover crops and or regrassing straight away afterwards. I found that to be really helpful. Probably the other thing that was suggested from it, which we've taken up, which has been really good, is we've got those intermittently flowing waterways, so essentially drains that very rarely have water in them, and so it's never made sense to fence them because they grow a lot of grass and you just have to spray the grass essentially, and very little environmental benefit in doing it, I suppose. But what we've been doing since then is using just a reel and sanders to fence off those drains or waterways when there's water in them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been quite good. In terms of the least useful, probably from my point of view, they had a suggestion about using low water use nozzles for hosing the yard, which we found that the staff disliked them and they broke quite easily. So we tried them for a bit and then sort of changed back. I'm a big fan of reducing water use, but at the same time, we've got quite a bit of storage for our effluent and the ability to deal with that when we've got too much, when the soil moisture levels aren't conducive to spreading effluent. So reducing farm dairy effluent, for me probably wasn't, or in terms of the quantity, wasn't as important as allocating the nutrients evenly across the paddock and ensuring that the plant uptook them before they went through the soil profile and entered the waterway.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Cool, thank you. Yeah.
Great. That's it.
Really, yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you.
For us, it was probably the planting of the wetland, and it gave us a kick up the bum, I suppose, to actually talk to Horizons and implement it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good to sort of find some low-hanging fruit, I suppose, that we could do relatively easily, and then like when you were saying with the wetland, that was a little bit more aspirational. So yeah, it was helpful.
Awesome, thank you. Alistair, am I allowed to ask another question? If there's other
You
people.
can. I have a question from Linda too as well to come, but you fire one in quick, Marnie.
Okay, my question is kind of for you, Alistair, but really Richard and Wendy might want to jump in on it as well. And it just goes back to Craig's point about having to put a freshwater module into your farm environment plan. And what I'm worried about is that you have sort of a climate module, a biodiversity module, and a freshwater module. And actually we know that you can get win-win-wins across all of those things with single actions, if you know what I mean. Like, for example, the wetland is a biodiversity, a climate, and a water wetland, a water win. And I'm wondering how with these FEPs you think, Alistair, we can make sure that we don't get a weird kind of weird outcome where you're not making the most of the actions that you take to get those win-win-wins?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And again, this is actually about how these plans are structured out in the end, and there is going to be a bit of devil in the detail here about exactly how that all looks. I mean, for me, intuitively, I would suggest that there would be that the freshwater module would just be highlighting areas in and around the farm that might, you know, some attention focusing through that kind of section, and that all of the actions, every single action across biodiversity and all of those kind of things actually ended up in an action list and with timeframes and stuff like that around them at the end of the plan. So to actually make sure that it's all combined together, and they might have a heading or something like that around them, but actually to make sure that things don't get lost by having actions spread right the way throughout the plan. It's sort of, you know, a good farm environment plan should always have a map. It should always have that kind of the body, and then it should have its action list at the end of it, you know, and actually making sure that that action list covers all of those little siloed pieces, I think is very important for it to actually be meaningful for a farmer to look at. That's my suggestion anyway.
Thanks, you guys.
Linda,
Yeah.
you had your hand up, and did you have a question for us?
No, I didn't. I must have put my hand up by mistake. Sorry.
Okay, oh no, that's all good. Were there any others who wanted a question asked? Annabelle from Whanganui. Were there any questions that immediately came to mind for you? You'd have to turn your mic on if you wanted to ask that. Otherwise, feel free to use the chat. Looks like all is actually very quiet at this end. In which case, time, and I've just had Craig saying time's probably up anyway. So actually, thank you everyone for coming and being involved with our short, punchy webinar. Hopefully, we've taken up 40 minutes of your time almost. And thank you so much, Wendy and Richard, for your time. Thank you for all attendees. It's been really good. Hopefully you've got some value out of it. And we will see you at whatever next event that we have running.
There's a wee question there from Annabelle, if you've got time.
Yes, there is. Is Horizons the only place to get a plan template? I would suggest not. There are various different places where you can get plan templates from. Beef and Lamb New Zealand offer a LEP template, a land environment plan template, which potentially could be a starting point for you. If we're talking about, it really depends on how much detail you want to cover, because if we're talking about, you know, these freshwater modules and stuff, there's a lot of development yet to come. So actually keeping an eye on this space really closely over the next wee while would be really worth your while. Nardine has just posted up that we actually have a farm template from Fonterra, which we are allowed to share. So if you provide your details, or feel free to call us afterwards, Annabelle, and we can provide that template to you if that would be of help. And that offer is out to anyone too as well who's attended today. Very happy to provide that out to you if you provide us your contact details. All right. Thank you so much all for attending our webinar. I will close it up there, and you guys have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Alistair.
See you, everyone.
Thanks, Alistair, and Wendy and
Thank
Richard.
you.
Yeah, hey, thanks very much.
Yeah, just go up there.